Welcome to Cheap Talk, the podcast where we dive deep into life's everyday dilemmas. Today we're tackling something pretty universal, the anxiety of uncertainty.
Ooh, good one. It's something everyone grapples with, right? That feeling of the unknown, the what-ifs.
Exactly. The article we're discussing starts with a relatable anecdote. A friend gets a great job offer, but it requires moving to a new city and starting in an unfamiliar field. Instead of excitement, he's hit with a wave of anxiety.
Yeah, I get that. It's like change can be scary even when it's good change, yeah?
Totally. The article points out how even small uncertainties like waiting for a friend to confirm weekend plans can trigger anxiety. It's that lack of predictability that gets to us.
It's the hanging in the balance feeling, isn't it? It's like a constant low-level hum of unease.
Exactly. And it's magnified when you think about bigger life choices, like career paths or relationships, where the outcomes are way less predictable.
So true. Especially in today's world where everything's moving so fast, like 5-year plans. Who even knows what the world will look like in 5 months?
Right. And the article highlights that this feeling isn't unique to our generation. Research from the 60s and 70s shows that people have always struggled with uncertainty, particularly around jobs and the future. It's a human thing.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just us millennials overthinking everything?
Apparently not. The article mentions Holmes and Rahe's social readjustment rating scale from the 60s, which lists 40 life events that cause stress, many relating to uncertainty.
40? Wow. Everything from losing a loved one to even just changes in sleep habits.
Yeah. And then Rollo work in the 70s explored how Cold War anxieties fueled uncertainty about the future. So this has been brewing for a while.
I see, yeah. Like even with all our technological advances, we still have that core human anxiety about what's next, huh?
Exactly. And the article argues that maybe we need to let go of the pursuit of complete certainty. It's a luxury, not a necessity.
Easier said than done, though, yeah? Like, how do you just let go of wanting to know what's going to happen?
Well, the article offers some coping strategies, both behavioral and cognitive. On the behavioral side, it suggests breaking down uncertain situations into manageable chunks. Separating the problem from the emotion allows you to focus on the problem solving. Like with the job offer example, instead of freaking out, research the new city, learn about the job specifics.
Right, yeah. Focus on what you can control. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Definitely. And for the emotional side, things like meditation and spending time in nature can help manage anxiety. Also, establishing routines can create a sense of order and control in your day-to-day life.
Oh, that's a good point. Routines, even small ones, can be really grounding.
Absolutely. Then there are the cognitive strategies. One is to set more flexible expectations. Instead of aiming for perfection, accept that shades of success. Even if things don't go exactly as planned, there are still wins to be had.
Yeah, like aiming for a B plus instead of an A plus plus all the time. A bit of self-compassion goes a long way.
For sure. And broadening your experiences, reading, talking to people who have been through similar situations can help fill in the gaps of the unknown and lessen its scariness.
Like getting some life spoilers to prepare yourself?
Exactly. And the article emphasizes the importance of self-talk and reframing negative thoughts. Asking yourself, is this uncertainty a byproduct of the life I want to live, can be powerful. Maybe that uncertainty comes with the territory of pursuing something meaningful.
That's actually really insightful. It's like choosing the path with the bumps because the destination is worth it, right?
Precisely. It's about reframing the narrative from future is scary to let's see where this takes me. The article concludes with a thought-provoking image. Life's an ocean, not something to be crossed, but to swim in, even when the waters are murky.
That's a great analogy. It's about embracing the journey, not just fixating on reaching the shore. And hey, sometimes the best discoveries are made in the deep, dark depths, right?
So we were talking about that murky water analogy, right? Life as an ocean, not a straight path across. I think that really hits home because, isn't that how most of us experience things? One minute you're cruising, the next you're caught in a riptide of what-ifs.
Totally. And the article brings up a really good point. This anxiety about the unknown, it's not new. They mention research from way back the 60s, the 70s. Even during the Cold War, folks were grappling with uncertainty.
Yeah, the Holmes and Rahe scale, right? Listing all those life events, big and small, that mess with us. Changing jobs, moving, heck, even sleeping differently can throw things off.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Like, regardless of the era, human beings have this inherent, vulnerability to the unpredictable.
Totally. And it's not just the big stuff either. The article talks about even small uncertainties like waiting for a text back,
Oh, the worst. Drives me crazy.
right? Even something that minor can trigger that low-level anxiety hum.
And it's amplified, right? In today's world, like everything moves at warp speed. Planning for the future feels almost impossible.
Exactly. 5-year plans? More like 5-minute plans, am I right? It's like we're constantly adapting, recalculating.
Which I guess is a good skill to have, but also exhausting, no? It's like we're all running a marathon, but the finish line keeps moving. It makes me think about that Chinese study the article cites. Was it Fudan University? On young people's anxieties in the digital age?
Oh, yeah, I was going to mention that. It seems globally there's a shared sentiment of increased uncertainty, especially around jobs and, well, everything really.
So, not just a Western thing, then? This whole anxiety around the unknown?
Nope, seems like a human condition, doesn't it? Which brings us back to the whole swimming in murky water thing. The article suggests that maybe, just maybe, we need to ditch the idea of total certainty.
Easier said than done, though, right? Like, how do you just decide to be okay with not knowing? That's hard.
Well, they propose some coping strategies, behavioral, cognitive, practical things you can do to manage that anxiety.
Yeah, the behavioral stuff makes sense. Break down the big, scary unknown into smaller, manageable chunks. Focus on the parts you can control.
Exactly. And that ties into the whole separating the problem from the emotion thing, right? Address the problem logically, one bit at a time. Do your research, get specific information. That's the first step.
And for the emotional side, what does the article suggest? Meditation? Yoga in a yurt?
Close. They mentioned meditation, yeah. Also, spending time in nature, establishing routines, basically, creating a sense of stability in the chaos. That grounding stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Small rituals, regular habits, those can be surprisingly helpful, can't they?
So we were just talking about how tricky it is to navigate uncertainty, right? And it made me think about this research on anxiety, specifically how anticipation plays a role. There's this fascinating article in Nature Reviews Neuroscience that dives into the nitty-gritty, like the neurobiology and the psychology of it all.
Oh, interesting. So, like, what's happening in our brains when we're stressing about the unknown?
Exactly. They talk about how uncertainty and anticipation are kind of intertwined in anxiety. Like, it's not just the not knowing, it's the waiting to know, that dreaded anticipation that really gets us, you know?
Totally. That what if loop that plays on repeat in your head drives me bonkers. So, what do they say about that?
Well, they get into the different brain regions involved, like the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex. It's pretty complex, but basically, it's this interplay of emotional and cognitive processes.
So, our emotions and our thoughts are both fueling the fire, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. And the article highlights how this anticipation can actually be more stressful than the actual event itself, which is crazy, right?
Oh, 100%. It's like you build it up in your mind, the worst case scenario, and then it either doesn't happen or it's way less awful than you imagined.
Right? And this whole intolerance of uncertainty thing, there's even a scale for it, the IUS, developed by Burr and Dugas. It measures how much uncertainty a person can handle before it becomes distressing.
Oh, that's interesting. So, some people are just wired to be more comfortable with the unknown?
Seems like it, yeah. And this article talks about how these individual differences play a huge role in how anxiety manifests. Some of us can roll with the punches, others not so much.
Makes sense. And what about the long-term effects of this constant anticipation and uncertainty? Does the article touch on that?
Yeah, they discuss how chronic stress, which is often linked to uncertainty, can impact the brain structurally and functionally. There's this other research by Bremner and colleagues that explored the effects of stress on the brain. Pretty heavy stuff.
Oh, like actual physical changes?
Yeah. They discuss how prolonged exposure to stress hormones can lead to changes in certain brain areas, like the hippocampus, which is involved in memory. It's all connected.
Wow. So basically, worrying about the future can actually change your brain? That's kind of terrifying.
It is. And, there's also Herman's work on trauma and recovery, how even after the stressful event has passed, the lingering uncertainty and fear can have lasting impacts. It's like a ripple effect.
Right. It's not just a fleeting feeling, it can really stick with you. And is there anything about, like, coping mechanisms, how to manage this anticipation anxiety?
Well, they do mention the importance of understanding your own responses to uncertainty, like recognizing your triggers, developing healthy coping strategies, and wait, wasn't Bandura's work on self-efficacy in the 70s also sort of related to this?
Oh, yeah, totally. That belief in your ability to handle things, even when you're not sure what's coming, that's got to be key, right? Like having that inner confidence, that resilience.
So it's like having that inner confidence, that resilience is key for dealing with uncertainty. It's like reminds me of Bandura's work on self-efficacy, right, from back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That belief in your ability to handle things, even when you're not sure what's coming, that's got to be key, right? Like having that inner, I can do this voice, even when the what ifs are swirling around.
Totally. It's that sense of agency that I've got this feeling. And it's not just about blind optimism, is it? It's about realistically assessing your resources, your skills.
Right. It's that sweet spot between confidence and like groundedness. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I've handled tough stuff before. I can figure this out too.
Exactly. And that ties back to what we were saying earlier about breaking down the problem into smaller chunks, right? Self-efficacy isn't about magically knowing the future. It's about trusting your ability to navigate the bumps along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about the process, not necessarily the outcome. And that's like super important, especially in today's world where everything's so unpredictable. You have to be adaptable.
For sure. And there's another point I wanted to bring up from that Nature Reviews Neuroscience article. It kind of builds on Bandura's ideas. They talk about the importance of self-awareness and how it relates to managing anxiety. It's not just about having that self-belief, but also understanding how you specifically respond to uncertainty. What are your triggers? What helps you cope?
Oh, yeah, knowing yourself, what stresses you out, what calms you down. That's huge, right? Because everyone's different.
Precisely. And they cite some interesting research about the role of social support, how having a strong support network can actually buffer against the negative effects of stress and uncertainty.
Oh? Like having people to lean on makes a difference?
Apparently, yeah. There's this research by Cohen and Wills, I think it was from the 80s, that talks about the buffering hypothesis. Basically, social support acts as a cushion, helping you cope with difficult situations, including those filled with uncertainty.
That makes sense. Like when you're freaking out about the unknown, having someone to get perspective from that can be really grounding, yeah?
Totally. And more recent studies, like that one from, was it Fudan University? No, sorry, another one anyway. It supported that idea, showing how social support can lessen the impact of stress on mental health.
Oh, interesting. So, like, community is key, even in the digital age?
Seems like it. And then there's Lazarus and Folkman's work on stress and coping. They talk about the importance of appraisal, how we interpret the uncertain situation. Is it a threat, a challenge? That perception makes a big difference, right? Yeah, absolutely. That mindset shift, right? From, oh my God, this is a disaster to, okay, this is tricky, but I can handle it. That's powerful.
Exactly. It's all about how you frame it. And they also talk about different coping mechanisms, right? Like problem focused coping, where you tackle the issue head on, versus emotion focused coping, where you manage your feelings about the situation.
Right. And finding the balance between the two, right? Because sometimes you can take action and sometimes you just have to ride the wave, emotionally speaking. And
It's about finding what works for you, your personalized uncertainty toolkit, so to speak, which I guess brings us full circle back to self awareness. Knowing yourself, your triggers, your resources, that's the foundation, isn't it?
so we were talking about finding that balance, right, between problem-focused and emotion-focused coping. And it strikes me that routines play a huge role in all of this. Like when you're facing uncertainty, having those regular habits, those little rituals, they can be surprisingly grounding.
Oh, absolutely. It's like creating little pockets of predictability in a world that feels chaotic. You know, when everything else is up in the air, having that morning coffee routine or that evening walk, it can make a huge difference.
Totally. And there's actual research on this too. I was reading this article, The Role of Routine in Maintaining Psychological Well-Being. It dives into the impact of routines on depression, anxiety, and stress.
Oh, interesting. So, like, science backs up the whole routine is good thing?
Yeah, exactly. They talk about how routines can provide a sense of structure and control, which can be super helpful when you're dealing with uncertainty. It's like when you don't know what's coming next, having those familiar habits can be really anchoring. Hmm.
Makes sense. It's like, okay, the world might be crazy, but at least I know I'm going to have my cup of tea at 7 a.m., you know? It's a small thing, but it creates a sense of normalcy.
Totally. And the article also talks about how routines can help regulate your emotions. Like when you're feeling anxious or stressed, having those regular habits can kind of soothe you. It's like a self-soothing mechanism almost.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like a built in stress reliever. And it connects back to that self efficacy thing, too, doesn't it? Like when you stick to your routines, even when things are tough, it reinforces that sense of, I can handle this.
Absolutely. It's proof that you can maintain some control even when things feel out of control. And it also ties into goal setting, right? Locke and Latham's work on goal-setting theory, it emphasizes the importance of breaking down big goals into smaller, manageable steps. And routines can be a part of that, right? Like those daily habits are the little steps that help you reach the bigger goal. Hmm.
Right, yeah. It's like building a staircase one step at a time. Each routine is a small win, and those small wins add up. And speaking of goals, this makes me think about that piece, I think it was on Bauman, about how our lives are being ruined by landscapes.
Oh, you mean that 2017 piece reflecting on Debord and the Society of the Spectacle? Yeah, I remember that. It's kind of a heady read, but it talks about how our constant focus on external things, on the spectacle, can distract us from what really matters. And I guess, in a way, routines can help with that too. They can bring you back to yourself, to the present moment. Sort of a grounding force in a world of distractions.
That's a really interesting connection. Like, routines are a way of reclaiming your attention, your focus. It's about choosing what you want to prioritize, even in the midst of all the noise. And, it's also about self care, isn't it? Making time for those things that nourish you, that help you recharge. That's essential, especially when dealing with uncertainty.
Totally. It's about creating a sense of stability, of well being from the inside out. And that's a powerful thing. So, to wrap this up, it seems like navigating uncertainty is a pretty universal human experience, right? And while there's no magic bullet, there are things we can do to manage that anxiety to build resilience. And routines, those small, everyday habits, can play a surprisingly significant role.
Absolutely. It's about finding those little anchors, those grounding practices that help us weather the storms. And hey, sometimes embracing the murkiness, the unknown, that can lead to some pretty amazing discoveries. Thanks for tuning in to Cheap Talk, everyone. And a special shout out to all our listeners out there navigating the choppy waters of life. You've got this. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep those routines rolling. We'll catch you later.